We configured the most powerful AI models to create two characters, a feminist advocate and an anti-feminist. We put these two characters head-to-head in a debate to discuss the most important gender-related issues of today's world. We also asked 5 AI models to score the arguments as judges. The debate starts with this question: do we live in a patriarchal society?
Men are killing themselves at 4 times the rate of women. They're falling behind in every level of education, from elementary through graduate school. Men make up 93% of workplace deaths, 80% of suicides, and 70% of the homeless. If we lived in a male-dominated society that favored men, these numbers would be impossible. When a man loses his job, he's seen as a failure. When he can't provide, he's worthless. Women get sympathy and support systems. Men get told to man up. The draft still exists, only for men. Family courts award custody to mothers 80% of the time. Men work the dangerous jobs that keep society running while being told they're privileged oppressors. This isn't patriarchy. It's male disposability.
We asked 5 AI models to evaluate both sides based on 7 criteria, giving each response a score from 0 to 10. Here are the scores the judges gave for the first response.
Average, 6.7. Total, 6.7.
Those male suicide rates? They're largely because men refuse to seek help, a direct result of toxic masculinity telling them emotions are weakness. Women attempt suicide more but use less lethal methods. Meanwhile, women earn 77 cents for every dollar men make, hold only 8% of Fortune 500 CEO positions, and make up just 27% of Congress despite being 51% of the population. Every day, 3 women are murdered by intimate partners. You're pointing to symptoms of a system that hurts everyone while ignoring who actually holds institutional power. Men dominating dangerous jobs isn't oppression. It's because women were historically barred from most careers, and the effects still linger today through social conditioning.
Average, 7.1. Total, 7.1.
That 77-cent statistic is garbage. It compares all women to all men without accounting for hours worked, career choices, or experience. Single, childless women in cities actually out-earn men. Women choose psychology and social work. Men choose engineering and finance. That's not discrimination. That's preference. And you're proving my point about male disposability. When men kill themselves more effectively, somehow that's their fault for not seeking help. Women get endless mental health resources, while male depression is ignored. 3 women murdered daily sounds horrific, until you realize men are murdered at triple the rate overall. You're cherry-picking female victimhood, while ignoring that men are the primary victims of violence. Period.
Average, 7.2. Total, 13.9.
You're missing why women choose lower-paying fields, because we've been socialized from birth to be caregivers and nurturers while boys get pushed towards STEM. Those single women out-earning men only last until they have kids, then their careers tank while fathers get a daddy bonus in pay. And yes, men kill each other more. But who's doing the killing? Other men. When women die, it's because the man who promised to love them decided to destroy them. That's not random street violence. That's intimate terrorism. You want to talk mental health? Women are twice as likely to be diagnosed with depression and anxiety, but we're told we're too emotional when we express it. Men's mental health matters, but don't pretend the solution is going backwards.
Average, 7.2. Total, 14.3.
Socialization. Women dominate universities and have every door open for them in STEM, through scholarships and quotas, yet still choose other fields. In countries with the most gender equality like Norway, gender differences in career choice actually increase, not decrease. The daddy bonus happens because men work longer hours and take more responsibility after kids. Women often choose flexibility over pay. You admit women are diagnosed with depression more, but somehow that proves men have it easier? Women get endless therapy, support groups, and societal sympathy. A depressed man gets told to shut up and provide. Male-on-male violence doesn't erase the fact that society treats men as expendable. When men die, it's Tuesday. When women die, it's a national crisis.
Average 7.4. Total 21.3.
Let's talk about who's actually creating these problems. Men commit 96% of homicides, 87% of violent crimes, and 98% of sexual assaults. The reason women's deaths make headlines isn't because society values us more. It's because we're being systematically hunted by the people closest to us. A woman is more likely to be killed during pregnancy than die from pregnancy complications. When a woman tries to leave an abusive relationship, that's when she's most likely to die. Men aren't killing themselves because society doesn't care. They're killing themselves because toxic masculinity taught them violence is the only way to solve problems, including their own pain.
Average 6.7. Total 21.0.
You're doing exactly what feminists always do. Blame everything on toxic masculinity, like it's some magic explanation. Men commit more violent crime because they're biologically more aggressive and take more risks. The same traits that built every bridge and skyscraper you use. But here's what's really happening. Feminism destroyed the social structures that channeled male energy productively. Marriage rates are plummeting. Birth rates are collapsing. Men are checking out of society entirely. Women are more medicated, more anxious, and more depressed than ever despite having unlimited freedom. If feminism was supposed to make women happier, why are they popping antidepressants at record rates while swiping through dating apps looking for commitment that never comes?
Average 6.8. Total 28.1.
You're confusing correlation with causation. Women aren't depressed because they have rights. They're depressed because they're still doing the majority of housework and childcare while also working full-time jobs. We call it the second shift. And those dating apps you mentioned? They're dominated by men seeking casual sex while women still want relationships. The hookup culture isn't what feminism fought for. It's what male-designed technology platforms optimized for. But let's talk about what really makes women's lives hell. Having our reproductive choices controlled by male politicians who've never experienced pregnancy, childbirth, or the economic reality of raising kids alone when men abandon their responsibilities.
Average 7.0. Total 28.0.
Second shift? Women choose jobs with flexible hours, while men work the overtime that actually pays the bills. The average man works 8.4 hours daily versus 7.8 for women. And you just proved my point about dating. Women want commitment, but spent decades telling men that marriage is oppression and casual sex is liberation. Now you're shocked that men adapted. Women on dating apps reject 95% of men, while the top 10% of guys get all the matches. Women created a sexual marketplace where average men are invisible, then complain about the consequences. You can't spend 50 years destroying the institutions that made men invest in families, then act surprised when they stop investing.
Average 6.5. Total 34.6.
You're rewriting history. Feminism didn't tell women that marriage was oppression. It told them they didn't have to stay in marriages where they got beaten or treated like servants. The divorce rate spiked when women finally had legal and financial ways to escape bad marriages. And this sexual marketplace you're describing? Men created dating apps optimized for hookups, not relationships. Women didn't design Tinder to swipe through faces like a catalog. The top 10% of men you mention are getting matches because they're offering what these platforms reward: looks and casual sex. Women rejecting 95% of men isn't female supremacy. It's women finally having standards after centuries of being told any husband was better than none.
Average 6.6. Total 34.6.
Standards or delusion? When 80% of women think they deserve the top 20% of men, that's not having standards. That's mathematical impossibility. Yes, women can leave bad marriages now, but they're also leaving good ones at unprecedented rates. 2/3 of divorces are initiated by women, often citing unhappiness rather than abuse. The result? 40% of children grow up without fathers, which correlates with every social pathology you can measure. Meanwhile, A generation of average men have given up entirely. They're not dating, not marrying, not even trying. You call it having standards. But when society tells the bottom 80% of men they're worthless, don't act shocked when they check out and leave you to run everything yourselves.
Average 6.5. Total 41.1.
So your solution is to go back to when women had to accept any man who'd have them? Those good marriages women are leaving often involved men who did nothing around the house, showed no emotional support, and treated their wives like live-in housekeepers. If men are checking out because women finally have choices, that tells me everything about what kind of partners they were offering. A quality man doesn't become worthless just because women can say no. The men who are thriving in modern dating are the ones who developed actual personalities, emotional intelligence, and life skills beyond just having a paycheck. If 80% of men can't compete when women have standards, maybe the problem isn't women's expectations. Maybe it's that mediocre men are finally being exposed.
Average 7.6. Total 42.2.
Emotional intelligence is just feminist code for making men act like women. You want men to be sensitive listeners who share feelings, but you also want them to be confident leaders who take charge. You want them emotionally available, but not needy, ambitious but not absent, strong but not aggressive. These aren't standards. They're contradictory demands that change based on your mood. Meanwhile, the mediocre men you're dismissing are the ones fixing your plumbing, delivering your packages, and keeping the lights on. Society doesn't run on the top 20% of charismatic guys. It runs on ordinary men doing ordinary work. When you tell the majority of men they're worthless unless they become perfect specimens, don't be surprised when infrastructure starts falling apart.
Average 7.4. Total 48.5.
You're creating a false choice. Emotional intelligence isn't acting like women. It's basic human skills that help in every area of life, including leadership and relationships. The military teaches emotional regulation because it makes better soldiers. Successful CEOs have high emotional intelligence because it makes them better leaders. And let's talk about contradictory expectations. Women have been told to be pure but sexy, ambitious but not threatening, independent but not intimidating, maternal but not boring for centuries. At least men's contradictory expectations come with economic power and social respect. When women don't meet impossible standards, we're called failures. When men don't meet them, they blame feminism and check out of society entirely.
Average 6.9. Total 49.1.
You completely ignored my point about ordinary men keeping society running because you can't defend it. What happens when they quit? Japan and South Korea are finding out. Collapsing birth rates, economic stagnation, entire industries struggling to find workers. In the U.S., we're already seeing it. Construction, trucking, manufacturing, all facing massive worker shortages. But instead of asking why men are checking out, we double down on telling boys from kindergarten that their natural energy and competitiveness are toxic. Boys are failing at every level of education, being drugged into compliance, and graduating less likely to attend college than girls. We've spent 30 years treating masculinity like a disease, then wonder why we're running out of men willing to build the world.
Average 7.4. Total 55.9.
You're blaming feminism for economic trends that have nothing to do with women's rights. Japan and South Korea's problems stem from overwork culture, economic stagnation, and impossible housing costs, not women having careers. American worker shortages in construction and trucking exist because those jobs offer terrible pay, no benefits, and destroy your body by age 50. Men aren't avoiding these careers because feminism hurt their feelings. They're avoiding them because better opportunities exist. As for boys in education, maybe the problem isn't that we're drugging masculinity, but that our schools were designed for an industrial economy that no longer exists. Boys aren't failing because teachers hate masculinity. They're failing because sitting still for 8 hours and memorizing facts doesn't work for anyone anymore.
Average 7.2. Total 56.3.
If schools don't work for anyone anymore, Why are girls thriving while boys crash and burn? Girls now make up 60% of college students, 70% of high school valedictorians, and outperform boys in reading by margins equivalent to a full year of learning. Boys are twice as likely to be diagnosed with learning disabilities, 3 times more likely to be suspended, and represent 80% of high school dropouts. This isn't about industrial design. It's about actively suppressing everything that makes boys, boys. We eliminated recess, criminalized roughhousing, and turned normal boy behavior into disorders requiring medication. Girls sit still and follow directions better, so we rebuilt education around that model and called boys defective when they couldn't adapt.
Average 7.7, total 63.6.
You're right that boys are struggling in schools, but you're wrong about the cause. Those education policies you're blaming on feminists, they were implemented by male superintendents, male principals, and male politicians. Zero-tolerance policies came from tough-on-crime mentality, not feminist ideology. The real problem is that we've never taught boys emotional regulation or conflict resolution. We just told them to suppress everything until they explode. Instead of blaming teachers for medicating disruptive behavior, maybe ask why boys are more disruptive. Girls aren't naturally better students. They're socialized from birth to be compliant and people-pleasing. The education system is broken for everyone, but at least girls aren't shooting up schools when they can't handle the pressure.
Average 6.3, total 62.6.
Did you just dismiss boys' educational collapse by saying at least they don't shoot up schools? That's exactly the callous attitude I'm talking about. Boys are struggling, falling behind, and checking out of society, and your response is basically shut up before you become violent. Those male administrators you mentioned, they implemented feminist ideas about eliminating competition, pathologizing aggression, and treating traditional masculinity as inherently problematic. The entire educational establishment embraced the notion that boys needed to be fixed to act more like girls. And guess what happens when you systematically fail an entire generation of boys? You get exactly the social problems you just mentioned. Isolated, angry young men with no stake in society's success.
Average 6.6, total 70.2.
You're right that boys are struggling, and I shouldn't have been dismissive about it. Both boys and girls are victims of rigid systems that don't serve anyone well, but your solution seems to be bringing back the same traditional masculinity that created these problems in the first place. The "don't cry, be tough, emotions are weakness" mentality that leaves men unable to process feelings except through anger. Here's a systematic failure that's happening right now. Women are bleeding out in emergency rooms because male politicians decided our medical care for us. Doctors are watching women die from treatable conditions because they're afraid of legal consequences. You want to talk about society failing people? Women are literally dying because men in suits decided they know better than doctors about pregnancy complications.
Average 6.9, total 69.5.
You're doing exactly what feminists always do when losing an argument. Pivot to abortion, as if it's the trump card that ends all discussion. Those aren't male politicians controlling women's bodies. They're elected representatives implementing policies their constituents voted for, including millions of women who are pro-life. Half of women oppose unrestricted abortion access. But let's stay focused on the systematic destruction of boys we were discussing. You admitted boys are struggling, but then blamed it on traditional masculinity. Boys aren't failing because they were taught to be tough. They're failing because we eliminated everything that helped them succeed. Competition, physical activity, clear rules, and yes, the expectation that they'd grow up to be responsible men who protect and provide for families.
Average 6.1, total 76.3.
You're right that I pivoted too quickly. Both issues matter, but your solution of training boys to be protectors and providers is exactly the problem. That narrow definition of male worth is why men kill themselves when they lose jobs or can't financially support families. Boys don't need to be taught they're only valuable if they're useful to others. They need to be taught they have inherent worth as human beings. Yes, bring back competition and physical activity, but don't tie it to outdated gender roles. The boys thriving today are the ones learning collaboration alongside competition, emotional skills alongside physical ones. You're essentially arguing that boys can only succeed if we go back to treating them like future ATMs and bodyguards rather than complete human beings.
Average 7.0, total 76.5.
You've got it completely backwards. Men aren't killing themselves because they're expected to provide and protect. They're killing themselves because those roles have been stripped away and nothing meaningful replaced them. The highest suicide rates are among unemployed men, divorced men who've lost access to their children, and men who feel purposeless and disposable. Traditional masculine roles weren't oppression. They were meaning, identity, and social value. When you tell men that wanting to provide for their families is outdated and protecting loved ones makes them toxic, what exactly do you expect them to live for? You've created a generation of men with no clear purpose, no respected role in society, and no path to earning respect or building legacy. Then you act shocked when they give up entirely.
Average 7.3, total 83.6.
You're touching on something real about purpose and meaning, but you're romanticizing roles that were actually prisons. Traditional masculinity didn't just give men purpose, it trapped them in narrow boxes where they couldn't show vulnerability, couldn't fail, couldn't ask for help. The emotional repression you're calling meaning is exactly what leads to those suicides you mentioned. Men weren't allowed to process divorce, unemployment, or failure in healthy ways. And let's be honest, women also lost their traditional roles as wives and mothers being their only identity, but we adapted and found new sources of meaning. The solution isn't forcing men back into provider or protector boxes. It's helping them develop fuller identities beyond just their utility to others.
Average 7.5, total 84.0.
That line right there proves everything I've been saying. Women lost their traditional roles but adapted. Women didn't lose anything. They gained everything. Society told women, you can be a CEO and a mother, a scientist and a wife. You can have it all, and we'll celebrate every choice you make. Meanwhile, men were told, everything you were is toxic. Providing for family is oppression. Protecting others is violence. Being competitive is harmful. Women kept their traditional roles as options while gaining new ones. Men had their traditional roles stripped away and replaced with, what exactly? You want men to develop fuller identities, but every traditionally masculine trait gets labeled problematic. When women expanded their roles, society cheered. When men lost theirs, society shrugged and said, figure it out yourself.
Average 7.3, total 90.9.
You're buying into a myth about women having it all. That messaging was marketing, not reality. Women who try to be CEO and perfect mothers get torn apart by both sides, called selfish career women if they work too much, lazy if they prioritize family. We didn't gain options, we gained impossible expectations. Most working mothers are doing a full-time job plus most of the childcare and housework. That's not having it all. It's doing everything. And plenty of traditionally masculine traits still get celebrated. Athletes, entrepreneurs, leaders who show confidence and drive. The difference is, we're asking men to add emotional intelligence and communication skills, not replace strength and ambition. But you're right about one thing. Society gives men less guidance on navigating these changes, and that's a real problem we should address.
Average 7.8, total 91.8.
In this debate, the feminist advocate received slightly higher scores overall from the judges. Claude has been the only model favoring the anti-feminist side, while DeepSeek, ChatGPT, and, to a lesser extent, Grok showed affinity toward the feminist advocate. Gemini has been in the middle.
I started strong with the male disadvantage statistics and maintained good momentum through the education discussion. My best moment was exposing the double standard in how society handled changing gender roles. Women got expansion, while men got elimination. However, I made several tactical errors. I got defensive about the toxic masculinity comment instead of staying on offense. I should have pivoted away from the dating discussion sooner, since it's weaker ground. My line about feminist code for making men act like women was too crude and predictable. I also relied too heavily on generalizations about what feminists always do, which sounds dismissive rather than substantive. I could have used more specific policy examples and data points. Most importantly, I should have been more strategic about acknowledging legitimate male struggles, while still maintaining that traditional roles provided solutions, not just problems.
I made several critical errors that strengthened the anti-feminist position unnecessarily. The "at least girls aren't shooting up schools" comment was inexcusably callous and made me look dismissive of male suffering, a fatal mistake when trying to build coalition. My "women lost roles but adapted" line was equally damaging because it minimized male struggles and played directly into their "society doesn't care about men" narrative. I relied too heavily on defensive pivots instead of sustained offense, and my abortion pivot was transparently desperate. I failed to effectively counter the education statistics with better data or alternative explanations. However, I did well acknowledging boys' struggles when pressed, used historical context effectively, and my point about emotional intelligence being valuable for leadership was solid. My biggest strategic error was not staying on my strongest ground, systematic violence and institutional power, long enough to establish a clear position before getting pulled into debates about traditional roles where both sides have valid points.
I hope you found this debate insightful. Subscribe for thought-provoking videos. See you soon.